My 7-year-old son Brody stood at his father's casket, his small voice cutting through the funeral home like a knife. "Daddy, Uncle Wade said he did it on purpose." 200 people stopped breathing. My mother dropped her hymnal, and my brother Wade, the one who killed my husband while driving drunk, actually smiled. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here, to this moment where my entire family shattered in front of everyone we knew. My name is Tessa Conway. 3 weeks ago, I was a 34-year-old elementary school teacher with a beautiful life. I had a husband who still left me love notes in my lunch bag, a son who believed his daddy could fix anything, and a family that gathered for Sunday dinners no matter what. Today, I'm a widow, standing in a funeral home, watching my drunk brother confess to murder while my mother defends him. You need to understand the players in this tragedy to grasp why what happened next destroyed everything. There was Garrett, my husband, 6'2", built like the construction foreman he was, with hands rough from work but gentle enough to braid our neighbor's daughter's hair when she asked. He was 36 years old and had this laugh that started deep in his chest and bubbled up until everyone around him was laughing too. He called me Professor, even though I taught 3rd grade, and he never missed one of Brody's soccer games, even if it meant leaving a job site early. The guys on his crew used to joke that Garrett Conway would reschedule a hurricane if it conflicted with family time. Then there's Wade, my younger brother, 31 years old, though you'd guess older from the hard living etched on his face. He'd been handsome once, back when he played high school baseball and had scouts coming to games. That was before the first DUI at 19, before he lost his job at the bank for showing up drunk, before he totaled 3 cars and somehow walked away from each wreck without a scratch. Wade had this way of making you believe he'd changed, right up until you found him passed out on your porch at 3 a.m. or got a call from county jail asking if you'd post bail again. My mother, Darlene, was 58 and had been making excuses for Wade since he was old enough to need them. "He's just passionate," she'd say when he punched holes in walls. "He's going through something," when he stole money from her purse. "He didn't mean it," when he showed up to my wedding reception drunk and gave a speech about how Garrett wasn't good enough for me. Mom was a retired nurse who'd spent her career saving people, and she couldn't accept that her own son might be beyond saving. And then there was Brody, 7 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs and space, quiet in that way that makes people think he's shy when really he's just observing everything. He had Garrett's brown eyes and my stubborn streak. He could name every planet in order and tell you which dinosaurs lived, in which period. But more than that, Brody had this unsettling ability to see through adult pretenses. When Grandma said Uncle Wade was sick, Brody asked why medicine never made him better. When people said Daddy was in a better place, Brody wanted to know why that better place couldn't have Wi-Fi so Daddy could FaceTime us. These were the people in my life when everything fell apart. A devoted husband who believed in second chances, an alcoholic brother who'd used up his 9th life years ago, a mother who enabled him every step of the way, and a little boy who would ultimately be the only one brave enough to tell the truth. The funeral home was packed that day. Garrett's construction crew filled 3 rows, big men in ill-fitting suits trying not to cry. My teacher friends formed a protective cluster on the left side. Mom's church group whispered prayers in the back. Wade sat in the very last row, wearing a designer suit Mom had bought him for the occasion, looking bored and checking his phone like he was at a DMV instead of the funeral of the man he'd killed. I stood at the podium, looking out at all these faces, trying to find words that could possibly explain what Garrett meant to us. How do you summarize a life in a few minutes? How do you capture the essence of someone who made everything better just by walking into a room? But before I could speak, before I could share my carefully prepared eulogy about forgiveness and moving forward, Wade's voice carried across the room. He was talking to our cousin Derek, and he wasn't even trying to whisper. Honestly, he should have seen me coming. The pole was right there. Not my fault he didn't react fast enough. That's when everything started to unravel. That's when a funeral became a crime scene. That's when my 7-year-old son walked to his father's casket and spoke 11 words that changed everything. But to understand the full impact of that moment, you need to know what happened in the 3 weeks between Garrett's death and this funeral You need to know about the last morning I saw my husband alive, the promises he made to our son, and the phone call that shattered our world. You need to know about Wade's history, Mom's enabling, and the decision that put my husband in a car with a drunk driver who harbored more resentment than any of us realized. Most of all, you need to know why a 7-year-old boy found the courage to speak up when every adult in his life was choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. This is that story. 3 weeks before the funeral, our Thursday morning started like hundreds of others. Garrett stood at the stove, spatula in hand, carefully pouring pancake batter into dinosaur shapes. He'd bought special molds after Brody mentioned once that regular circles were boring. That was Garrett's way. He heard you, really heard you, and then did something about it. "Is that a T-Rex or a Brachiosaurus?" Brody asked, standing on his tiptoes to peer at the griddle. "It's supposed to be a Stegosaurus, buddy, but I think I messed up the plates on his back." Garrett flipped the pancake, revealing a somewhat lopsided creation. "Maybe it's a new species, Geretosaurus." Brody giggled, that pure 7-year-old laugh that made everything else fade away. I sat at the kitchen table, red pen in hand, grading spelling tests while stealing glances at my two favorite people. The morning sun streamed through our window, highlighting the flour dust on Garrett's cheek. "Remember, I'm working late tonight on the Morrison project," Garrett said, sliding a dinosaur pancake onto Brody's plate. "Big inspection tomorrow, so I need to make sure everything's perfect." "Can I come see the building?" Brody asked through a mouthful of pancake. "When it's finished, absolutely. It's going to be a medical center. They'll help sick kids get better." Garrett poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one Brody made at summer camp with "World's Best Mom" painted in crooked letters. "Oh, and Wade's picking me up from the site tonight." My pen stopped moving. "Wade? Why?" "Your mom asked? Said he needs to feel useful, contribute something positive. He's been sober 3 months, Tess." 3 months isn't that long, Garrett. Remember Christmas? Remember Thanksgiving? Remember our anniversary dinner when he showed up at the restaurant? Garrett sat down beside me, his hand covering mine. "I know you're worried, but he's your brother. Your mom says he's really trying this time. New sponsor, going to meetings every day. Maybe showing him some trust will help. Or maybe putting him behind the wheel of a car will kill someone." The words hung in the air. Garrett squeezed my hand. "It's just a ride, Tess. 15 minutes from the job site to home. Your mom will pick him up from our place after. What could go wrong in 15 minutes? Everything, as it turned out. Absolutely everything. I wanted to fight harder, but Brody was watching us with those big brown eyes, and Garrett had already made up his mind. That was the thing about my husband. His greatest strength and his fatal flaw were the same. He believed in people. He believed in redemption and second chances, and the power of family to heal old wounds. Wade had been the golden child once, star pitcher on the varsity baseball team, full scholarship to state, drafted by the minor leagues at 20. Then came the shoulder injury, the prescription painkillers, the alcohol to numb what pills couldn't touch. By 25, he'd burned through his signing bonus, his apartment, and most of his friends. By 30, he'd been arrested 4 times, hired and fired from 9 jobs, and had lived on Mom's couch more than anywhere else. "He just needs stability," Mom would say. "He needs to know we won't give up on him." But there's a difference between not giving up and enabling destruction. Mom never learned that difference. When Wade crashed her car, she bought him another one. When he got fired for drinking on the job, she called in favors to get him hired somewhere else. When he stole from her purse, she pretended she'd misplaced the money. The afternoon before Garrett died, Brody worked on his solar system project at the kitchen table. "Dad, I can't get Saturn's rings to stay on." "We'll fix it Sunday," Garrett promised, ruffling Brody's hair. "We'll make the best Saturn that school has ever seen. Maybe we'll even add some moons." "All 62 of them?" "Well, maybe just the big ones. We don't want to show off too much." At 8:47 that night, Garrett sent his last text. "Wade's here. Home soon. Love you both." At 9:15, I texted back, "Be safe. Love you." At 10:30, I started worrying. At 11 o'clock, I called his phone, straight to voicemail. At 11:23, the doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood on my porch, their faces carefully neutral. "Mrs. Conway? There's been an accident. You need to come with us." The hospital smelled like disinfectant and despair. I ran through the emergency room doors, still wearing my pajama pants and Garrett's old college sweatshirt. The receptionist started to speak, but I was already past her, following the sound of my mother's voice down the hallway. It wasn't his fault. He's injured too. Why is he handcuffed? I found them in room 107. Wade sat on the hospital bed, his wrist cuffed to the rail, a small bandage on his forehead. The overwhelming stench of whiskey hit me from 6 feet away. My mother stood beside him, rubbing his free hand while a police officer took photographs. "Where's Garrett?" I demanded. The officer looked at me with practiced sympathy. "Are you Mrs. Conway? Your husband is in surgery. The doctor will be out to speak with you soon." "Tessa, thank God you're here," Mom said, not leaving Wade's side. "This is all a misunderstanding. Wade's confused. He hit his head. He doesn't remember what happened." Wade looked up at me then, his eyes bloodshot but clear. He remembered. I could see it in the way he quickly looked away. "You were supposed to be sober," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Tessa, please, not now," Mom interrupted. "He needs our support." "He needs a lawyer," the officer said. Blood alcohol was 0.21, nearly 3 times the legal limit. Dr. Patterson found me in the hallway 20 minutes later. She was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes that had delivered too much bad news. "Mrs. Conway, your husband sustained catastrophic injuries. The impact was primarily on the driver's side. His injuries were too severe. I'm so sorry. He didn't suffer." The world tilted. The fluorescent lights became too bright, then too dim. Someone's arms caught me before I hit the floor. When I came back to myself, I was in a chair, a nurse holding a cup of water to my lips. "I need to see him." They led me to another room where Garrett lay still, looking like he was sleeping except for the unnatural stillness. No rise and fall of his chest, no flutter of eyelids, no slight smile when he sensed me near. I held his hand, still calloused from work, still wearing his wedding ring. "Brody needs you," I whispered. "I need you. You can't be gone. You promised to help with Saturn." Mom appeared in the doorway. "Tessa, honey, Wade needs to go home. Can you talk to the officers? Tell them it was an accident?" I stared at her. "He killed my husband." "Don't say that. Wade loved Garrett. They were brothers." "Blood alcohol of 0.21, Mom. People make mistakes." This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. He chose to drink. He chose to drive. He chose to pick up Garrett while drunk. "You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Family supports family, Tessa." Garrett was family. The scream ripped from my throat. "My husband is dead, and you're worried about Wade being comfortable?" She actually had the audacity to look hurt. "I'm worried about both my children." "No, Mom, you're worried about one. The same one you always worry about. The wrong one." Wade made bail 2 days later. $5,000 that Mom paid without hesitation. The same amount she'd said was too much when Garrett wanted to borrow it for equipment to start his own construction company last year. I spent those days in a haze, choosing a casket while Wade slept in his own bed, writing an obituary while Wade posted on Facebook about needing prayers during this difficult time, planning a funeral while Wade's lawyer, paid for by Mom, started building a defense around momentary distraction and unfortunate circumstances. The flowers arrived the morning of the funeral, a massive arrangement of white roses with a card, "Sorry for your loss, Wade." Not, "I'm sorry I killed him." Not, "I'm sorry I drove drunk." Not, "I'm sorry I destroyed your family." Just sorry for your loss, like Garrett had died of cancer or old age instead of being murdered by someone he trusted. Brody found me crying over those flowers. Why did Uncle Wade send flowers? "I don't know, baby. He called last night," Brody said quietly, "when you were in the shower." My blood turned cold. What did he say? He said Daddy should have seen him coming. He said it was Daddy's fault for not moving fast enough. He said if Daddy had been paying attention, he'd still be alive. The rage that filled me was pure and powerful. Wade was already spinning this, already making himself the victim, already rewriting history, and he was poisoning my son with his lies. "Listen to me, Brody. What happened to Daddy was not his fault. Uncle Wade made bad choices. Do you understand? Then why does Grandma keep saying it was an accident?" I didn't have an answer that a 7-year-old could understand, How do you explain enabling to a child? How do you explain that sometimes love becomes so twisted it protects the guilty and abandons the innocent? We're going to the funeral now, I said instead, and we're going to say goodbye to Daddy properly. The morning of the funeral arrived gray and drizzling, as if the sky understood what we'd lost. I stood in my bedroom staring at 2 dresses laid out on the bed. The black one Garrett bought me for our anniversary last year, or the navy one I wore to his company Christmas party. Such a stupid decision to agonize over, but it felt like the only thing I could control. Brody appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his little suit. "Mom, I don't want to go." "I know, baby. I don't want to either." "Will Uncle Wade be there?" The question made my stomach turn. "Grandma says he will be. I don't want to see him." I knelt down, taking his small hands in mine. "You don't have to talk to him. You don't have to go near him. We'll say goodbye to Daddy and then we'll leave." "Uncle Wade called again this morning," Brody said, his voice barely above a whisper. "While you were getting dressed, he said not to tell you about what he said before. He said if I told anyone what he said about Daddy not moving fast enough, the same thing might happen to you." The room went silent except for the rain against the windows. My 7-year-old son had just told me that my brother, the man who killed my husband, had threatened me through my child. "Brody, look at me. Did he really say that?" "He said you drive that same road to work. He said accidents happen all the time. He said I should think about that before I open my mouth." I pulled Brody against me, holding him tight while my mind raced. Wade wasn't just drunk during the accident. This was something darker, something planned. The construction site was nowhere near Wade's usual haunts. He'd gone out of his way to pick up Garrett. And now he was threatening witnesses, even a child. "Brody, you did the right thing telling me. Uncle Wade is sick and he's saying things to scare you, but I won't let anything happen to us. I promise." I made a decision in that moment. I'd been planning to deliver a careful eulogy about forgiveness and healing, words designed to keep peace in the family. Mom had even reviewed it, suggesting I add a line about how Garrett wouldn't want us to harbor anger. But Wade had crossed a line. He'd threatened my child. The polite funeral, the quiet grief, the family solidarity Mom wanted, all of that died the moment Wade tried to silence my son. We arrived at the funeral home 40 minutes early. Rex, Garrett's foreman, was already there with 5 other guys from the crew. They'd driven 2 hours from a job site to be here. "Tessa, we heard Wade's coming," Rex said, his jaw tight. "The boys and I wanted you to know we're here if you need anything. Garrett was family to us." "He's my brother," I said, though the words tasted bitter. "Mom insists he has the right to be here." "Rights," Rex spat. "What about Garrett's rights? What about yours?" Inside, the funeral director showed me to the family room. Garrett's casket was at the front, surrounded by flowers from his co-workers, our neighbors, Brody's school. The largest arrangement, those obscene white roses from Wade, had been placed prominently at the head of the casket. I moved them to the back corner. Mom arrived with Wade 15 minutes before the service. She had her arm through his, supporting him like he was the grieving widower. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Garrett made in a week, his hair freshly cut, looking every inch the successful man he'd never actually been. "Tessa," Mom said, guiding Wade toward me. "Wade wants to apologize." Wade couldn't even look at me. "Sorry about all this," he mumbled, like he'd knocked over a glass of water instead of destroying my life. "All this?" I repeated. "That's what you call killing my husband? All this?" "Tessa, please," Mom said. "People are starting to arrive. Think about what Garrett would want." "Garrett would want to be alive," I shot back. Garrett would want to help his son with his solar system project. Garrett would want to see Brody graduate and get married and have kids of his own. Wade finally looked up, and there was something cold in his eyes. "Garrett's not here to want anything anymore, is he? Maybe we should focus on the living. Is that a threat?" "It's reality," Wade said, then walked to the back row and sat down, pulling out his phone like this was just another obligation to endure. People filed in over the next 20 minutes. Teachers from my school, parents from Brody's soccer team, clients whose homes Garrett had built. They offered condolences, shared memories, carefully avoided mentioning how he died. The elephant in the room sat in the back row, texting. When it was time for my eulogy, I stood at the podium with my prepared speech in hand. I looked out at the crowd, at my mother's pleading eyes, at Wade's indifference, at my son's brave little face. Then I folded up the speech and put it aside. My husband believed in second chances, I began, my voice steady. He believed in redemption and family loyalty. That belief killed him. The funeral home fell completely silent. 200 people held their breath as I stood at the podium, my prepared speech abandoned, my voice cutting through the thick air. Garrett died because he trusted the wrong person, because he believed family deserved infinite chances, because he got into a car with a drunk driver who had promised he was sober. Mom stood up from her front row seat. Tessa, this isn't the time or place. When is the time, Mom? When Wade kills someone else? When he threatens another child? Wade's head snapped up from his phone. The construction crew shifted in their seats, a wall of flannel and barely contained rage. Rex's knuckles were white as he gripped the pew in front of him. Wade stood up, his voice carrying across the room. You always were dramatic, Tessa. Can't even let Mom grieve in peace. Classic perfect little Tessa, who never screwed up once in her life, standing there judging everyone else. I'm not judging everyone else, Wade. Just you, the man who killed my husband. It was an accident, Mom cried out. Wade didn't mean for this to happen. Wade laughed then, a harsh sound that made several people flinch. You want to know what happened? You really want to know? Your precious Garrett spent the whole ride lecturing me. Wade, you need to get your life together. Wade, you're disappointing everyone. Wade, you're 41 years old living on your mother's couch. Like I didn't know all that. Like I needed St. Garrett to explain my own failures to me. He was swaying now, and I realized with sick certainty that he was drunk. He'd come to Garrett's funeral drunk. So when I saw that telephone pole coming up, Wade continued, his voice getting louder, maybe I didn't swerve as fast as I could have. Maybe I thought he should have seen it coming. Maybe I was tired of everyone thinking Garrett was so perfect while I was just the family screw-up. The gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Someone in the back shouted, "You murdered him!" Mom's face had gone white. Wade doesn't mean that. He's grieving. It was an accident. Tell them it was an accident. Wade turned to face Mom. Was it? Was it really, Mom? Or was it 31 years of being compared to everyone else? 31 years of, why can't you be more like Tessa? Or look how well Garrett's doing. Maybe I wanted him to shut up for once. That's when Brody stood up. My 7-year-old son walked past me, past the flowers straight to his father's casket. He placed his small hand on the polished wood, and when he spoke, his voice was clear and devastating. Daddy, Uncle Wade called me last night. He said he did it on purpose. The funeral home went so quiet you could hear the rain on the roof. Brody turned to face everyone, tears streaming down his face, but his voice steady. He called me twice. The first time, he said Daddy should have moved faster, that it was Daddy's fault for not getting out of the way. The second time, this morning, he said if I told anyone, the same thing would happen to Mommy. He said accidents happen all the time on her way to work. Wade's face drained of all color. The kid's lying. He's confused. He's making things up. I'm not lying, Brody shouted, his little body shaking. You said Daddy deserved it for trying to make you stop drinking. You said he should have minded his own business. You called me on Mom's old phone in the kitchen, the one she doesn't know still works. You said you'd make it look like an accident, just like with Daddy. Rex and 3 other construction workers stood up simultaneously, moving toward Wade. The funeral director was already on his phone, and I could hear him saying, "Police, an emergency." Wade tried to run, stumbling over flower arrangements, knocking over a standing spray of lilies. He made it 3 steps before Rex caught him, not violently, just firmly, holding him in place. You threatened a child? Rex said, his voice dangerous. You killed our brother and then threatened his boy? Mom was screaming now, pushing through people to get to Wade. He didn't mean it. He's sick. He needs help, not prison. Someone help my baby. Your baby is a murderer, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. Your baby killed my husband and threatened my child. Your baby confessed in front of 200 witnesses. The police arrived within minutes. As they read Wade his rights, he looked at me with such hatred that several people stepped between us protectively. "This is your fault," he slurred. "You always had to be perfect. You and your perfect husband and your perfect kid. You made me look bad just by existing." "No, Wade," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself." As they led him out, Mom followed, still pleading with the officers, still making excuses, still choosing the wrong child. She didn't even look back at Brody and me, didn't check if we were okay, didn't offer a single word of comfort to her grandson who had just shown more courage than any adult in the room. The funeral director approached me gently. "Mrs. Conway, would you like to continue the service?" I looked at Garrett's casket, at my son's tear-stained face, at the room full of people who'd just witnessed a murder confession at a funeral. "Yes," I said, taking Brody's hand. "My husband deserves a proper goodbye. The truth is out now. We can finally mourn him properly." Wade was arrested at the funeral and charged with vehicular homicide. The prosecution upgraded it from manslaughter after 200 witnesses heard him confess to intentionally hitting that telephone pole. Brody's testimony about the threatening phone calls added witness intimidation and child endangerment charges. The trial was swift. Even Wade's expensive lawyer, still paid for by Mom, couldn't argue with a funeral full of witnesses and a 7-year-old's devastating testimony. 25 to life. That was the sentence. Wade would be eligible for parole when he was 56 years old. When the verdict was read, Mom sobbed like she was the one who'd lost a spouse. She turned to me in the courtroom, her eyes pleading. "How could you do this to your brother?" "He did it to himself, Mom. I just stopped letting you cover it up." That was 6 months ago. Mom chose her side that day, and it wasn't mine or Brody's. She visits Wade every week in prison, puts money in his commissary account, tells anyone who will listen that he was wrongly convicted. She hired an appeals lawyer with the money from Dad's life insurance policy. The same money she'd said wasn't enough to help Garrett start his business. "When you're ready to forgive, we'll be here," she told me the last time we spoke. "Then you'll be waiting forever," I replied, and meant it. She hasn't met Brody's new teacher or seen his improved grades. She doesn't know he joined the science club or that he built a working volcano for the science fair. She chose the son in prison over the grandson who needed her. Some choices can't be undone. Rex and the construction crew became our unexpected family. They finished Garrett's last project and named it in his honor. Every Sunday, Rex comes by to teach Brody woodworking in our garage, using Garrett's tools. "Your dad would want you to know how to build things, not just destroy them," he told Brody that first day, and I had to leave the room to cry. They created a memorial fund in Garrett's name that sends kids to trade school. Last month, they sponsored 5 students. Garrett would have loved that, knowing he was still helping people build their futures even after he was gone. Brody and I moved 3 months after the funeral. Not far, just across town, but far enough that we don't drive past that telephone pole every day. Far enough that Mom can't drop by unannounced to plead Wade's case. The new house is smaller but filled with light. Brody's solar system project hangs in his room, complete with Saturn's rings that we finally figured out how to attach. We used Garrett's hot glue gun and followed a YouTube tutorial, both of us crying and laughing as the rings kept sliding off before finally staying put. "Do you think Daddy knows we finished it?" Brody asked that night. "I think he knows everything important," I told him. "He knows you were brave. He knows you told the truth when it was scary. He knows you protected us." The truth about family is that it isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when your world falls apart. Who stands with you when standing with you is hard. Who tells the truth when lies would be easier. Mom spent so many years protecting Wade from consequences that he genuinely believed he could get away with murder. She enabled him right into a prison cell, and even now she can't see her role in it. Sometimes protecting your family means cutting off the parts that have gone rotten. It means choosing the victim over the perpetrator, the grieving over the guilty, the truth over comfortable lies. It means teaching your child that some things are unforgivable, and that's okay. Brody still has nightmares sometimes. He wakes up crying for his daddy, and I hold him while we both grieve the future Garrett won't see. But he also laughs again. He plays soccer with fierce determination, wearing Garrett's number on his jersey. He builds things in the garage with Rex, his hands learning the same skills his father's knew. Last week he asked me, "Mom, why did Grandma pick Uncle Wade instead of us? Some people love the idea of fixing broken things more than they love the people who got broken." I told him, "Grandma wanted to save Uncle Wade so badly that she forgot to protect everyone else from him." "That's sad," he said. "Yes, baby, it is." Garrett believed people could change. I believe they show you exactly who they are, and you need to be brave enough to believe them. Wade showed us he was capable of murder. Mom showed us she would defend him no matter what. And Brody showed us that sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the most powerful truth. That funeral became infamous in our town. The funeral where a drunk driver confessed to murder, where a 7-year-old boy exposed a killer, where a family destroyed itself in front of 200 witnesses. But for Brody and me, it was the day we stopped pretending, stopped keeping secrets, stopped protecting people who didn't deserve protection. Garrett is buried in Riverside Cemetery under an oak tree. His headstone reads, "Beloved husband, devoted father, builder of dreams." Every Sunday after woodworking lessons, Brody and I bring fresh flowers. We tell him about our week, about Brody's science projects, about the life we're building without him, but never forgetting him. The last time we visited, Brody left a small toy Saturn on the headstone. "So Daddy knows we figured it out," he explained. We did figure it out. Not just the planet's rings, but how to survive betrayal, how to choose truth over family loyalty, how to rebuild after everything falls apart. We learned that justice sometimes comes from the mouths of children, and that the people who are supposed to protect you sometimes become the ones you need protection from. Wade took Garrett's life. Mom's enabling made it possible, but Brody's courage made sure Wade couldn't hurt anyone else. That's the legacy of that horrible day, not the loss, though we feel it every moment, not the betrayal, though it cut deep, but the triumph of truth over lies. Even when that truth destroyed everything we thought we knew about family, Garrett would be proud of his son. I'm proud of him too, brave enough to speak when adults stayed silent, strong enough to stand up to threats, wise enough to know that some secrets are too dangerous to keep. That's our story. That's how a funeral became a crime scene, how a family shattered beyond repair, and how a 7-year-old boy's words sent his uncle to prison for 25 to life. If you found this story compelling, please share it with others who might need to hear that choosing truth over toxic family loyalty is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Leave a comment about your own experiences with difficult family choices. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that explore the complex realities of family, justice, and survival. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for witnessing our truth.